For almost 2 years, Frank Grunwald endured the tortures and tragedies of life in Nazi concentration camps. Yet it was only in the waning weeks of Hitler's war against Allied forces, as food and water for Jewish prisoners decreased and stopped, that Frank entertained his first thoughts that he might not survive. As it turned out, it wasn't long before the young boy's doubts were put to rest.
We walk basically without food and water for 2 days.
When you called it a death march, when you first named it...
Well, the death march is because I didn't even know the word death march when I was going through it. I learned that the reference to it after the war. But
was it because they hoped that the prisoners would die?
I don't think they hoped that they would die, but basically they were dying. So anybody that was dragging behind, if they noticed that you were couldn't keep up and you were somehow getting further and further behind, when you ended up all the way behind the very last group, you were shot in the head and thrown into the ditch. So I understand now, after the war, that being referred to as the Death March. We ended up at the railroad station in Gleiwitz. They put us on open coal cars.
So not kettle cars?
So no, not kettle cars. These were open coal cars.
Had to be freezing.
Oh, freezing. Absolutely freezing. We were put on those for at least 2 days. We traveled in the open. The train would stop once in a while to refuel. The train was guarded. We had guards. The guards would get off, and we would get off and go into the snow, and people would relieve themselves in the snow, and we would be able to get snow and melt the snow and drink that or eat the snow to get some fluids. We were traveling from Poland across the Czech Republic into Austria, and when we were in the practically middle of the Czech Republic, there is a town called Moravská Ostrava. That's a Czech place, Moravská Ostrava. In German, it's Mörrische Ostrava. So we get into Moravská Ostrava, and the Czech women see us in these open cars, and they start throwing food into the cars. Unfortunately, most of the food was not edible. Like, they would throw a bag of flour in, or a bag of sugar in. And then a bunch of lemons were thrown in. And somebody got the idea, let's get some snow and we'll make lemon ice. We mixed the snow with the sugar and the lemons, and we had the lemon ice. After 2 days of travel, we ended up in the town of Mauthausen, and eventually in the concentration camp of Mauthausen.
And this is what country now? Poland?
Austria.
Austria.
So we traveled from Poland across the Czech Republic
to Austria.
We ended up in Mauthausen, and we spent several miserable days in Mauthausen, which was a miserable, tough camp to survive, mainly because of hunger and typhus. After about a week in Mauthausen, we ended up in another smaller concentration camp, a sub-camp of Mauthausen called Melk, outside of the city of Melk in Austria. We were in Melk for several months, 2 or 3 months actually. Then we were transported back to Mauthausen, where we stayed outdoors in some tents. There was a tent camp just outside of Mauthausen. And all of this time was like just hunger and disease, and people just dying left and right. And then we walked from the tent camp to a small camp about 22 miles away, called Gunskirchen. This is all in Austria. And Gunskirchen was a camp that was in the woods. It was really like a human dump in the woods. It was just basically they took a bunch of barbed wire and made a big barbed wire barbed wire fence and built 2 or 3 small barracks that were supposed to house people. And we couldn't sleep in the barracks because the barracks were full of dead people. So we decided to sleep outside, where most people slept anyway. And that camp had no running water, no kitchen, basically not sustainable from a human standpoint. And we were given a bowl of soup and a piece of bread in the morning, and then after the first 3 days we were given no food at all. And that's when I thought I was not going to make it, because after being weak already and not having minimum amount of food, that was the first time I realized that, gee, this could be, and you talk to yourself when you go through this, because you have nobody really else to talk to, so you have this conversation with yourself and saying, Michael, this could be it. You may not make it.
And how did you answer yourself?
And there was no answer for that. I kind of agreed that this could be the last few days.
As a child at that age, what would even inspire you to want to live, to want to go on?
Oh, you always want to live. That's like a natural drive.
But your life was so diminished.
I didn't feel like it was diminished. Mentally, I didn't feel like I was diminished. Physically, maybe, but I still thought there was a future when all this ends.
So you believed it would end?
I believed it would end.
Why? What, like?
I figured this cannot go on. But I began to question that, because when there was no water or food delivery, I thought, boy, this is really getting tough now. We may not make it.
I can't believe that that's your thought process after everything you've told me that was so unimaginable. This is the time when you think it's getting tough? Like it's been impossible.
This is getting really tough, yeah.
But it's been impossible to date.
It wasn't impossible. I was still alive. But now I'm getting weaker and hungrier and thirstier. And now I'm not sure that if I don't get something into my mouth, I'm not going to make it. And on the 5th day, in Gunskirchen, I wake up to machine gun and small arms fire. And I immediately think, oh my goodness, they must be shooting the prisoners. Because at this point I don't know where the army, where the line is, right, where the infantry is, and who is where. I have no idea. And actually it was an American Army unit that was looking for a German, I found this out after the war,
right,
that was looking for a German artillery post. And they accidentally ran into this group of 10 German soldiers and got into a firefight with them. And this was the 71st Infantry Division of the American Army.
I bet that name is stenciled in your mind forever.
It means a lot. I still have the 71st Infantry Division coffee mug that they gave me recently. Slowly waking up and looking around, and the sun comes out, and this is about 15 or 20 minutes after the firefight. I look up and I see 3 or 4 of the military guards, of the prison guards, mm-hmm, holding a white sheet. And I'm thinking, what's going on here?
Right.
And within 15 seconds, I see the first American GI.
Can your brain even process what's happening?
Oh yeah, I was thrilled. I didn't smile, but I was thrilled.